Okay, hi, my name is Emma. I am a physical therapist, and I'm here today with Dr. Emily, who is our running specialist, physical therapist, and gait analyst. And today we're going to talk about my results of my run analysis that we did a few weeks ago and just show you what comes with having a 3D gait analysis with us, all of the good information that you get, and how it can implicate your run planning, return to run, performance, kind of whatever your interest is. So I'm going to let Emily take this away and enjoy.
Okay. So at this point, we've already taken Emma through a couple of objective tests. We've looked at some of her mobility, her strength, just kind of get a picture of what she looks like off of the treadmill. And then at this point, we've had her hooked up with all the markers. We've captured her running on that treadmill. And then this is the output that we get. So we'll go ahead and watch this video from a couple different points of view. This is what the cameras are picking up on Emma. So we can see it in a couple different planes there from sagittal and then frontal. But one thing that we are looking at with Emma is she has some chronic right Achilles tendinopathy going on. And so we wanted to see if either her gait was impacting that with running, or if vice versa, if some of that Achilles tendinopathy is impacting the way that she runs. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. So then when we get all of this data, we'll kind of go through and interpret what it means. But our first thing we're going to notice here is our running score. For this particular run, Emma was at an 87.7%. Essentially what this number means is that the closer to 100% that you are, the more that your values for these different angles and forces lie within normative data. So 87.7%, pretty good. We're kind of in that light green. But if we scroll down, we'll look at this a little bit closer. This table here just kind of shows a general overview, and it splits it up between left and right sides of the body. So if we look at general form, we kind of are at a fair for both. But then if we scroll down and look more specifically at each joint, pelvis looks good, hips look pretty good, and then knees are a little bit worse, but still in that green. And then ankles are looking pretty good there. So that's just kind of a general overview to kind of tell you, here are some areas that you maybe need to focus in on for things that could be going on. As we start to look at general parameters, we first see cadence. So this is going to be how many steps are you taking in a minute per minute while running. This is a good score. We like to see this pretty high, ideally 165 or higher. The higher the better. It means less likely risk of injury. So Emma's there at 191, so we're happy with that number. Vertical oscillation, I like to see this number no more than 10 centimeters. Basically what the vertical oscillation means is how much are you bouncing up and down when you're running. I tell my runners, we want to make sure that we're moving forward when we run and that we're not just moving up and down, which is going to be a lot more efficient for running.
Haven't we also called that like the ponytail sign before? It's like kind of a fun little way to remind women, at least when they're running, if you see like the ponytail going up and down.
Yep, exactly. So, okay. And then looking at some more numbers here, again, we have it separated into this left side and then right side of the body. Ground contact time. So that is how long is the foot on the ground while it's contacting the ground. So we want that number to ideally be less than 210 milliseconds. If we look at her left side, she's on it for a little bit longer than we would like. So she gets that fair rating. Right is a little bit less than the left, but still not quite to where we want it with that below 210. So we get a good rating there, but still could be better. So then if we look at running categories, so based on her analysis, it's categorizing her as an Overstrider collapser. So we can read a little bit about what this means. It just basically means that she's overstriding a little bit. So she's landing out in front of her center of mass a little bit too far, and then collapsing, which just means that her pelvis is dropping a bit whenever she's landing and standing on that leg. We'll kind of look into that a little bit further as we go on. Okay, so again, we have our chart for how we're going to rate things just in general. But then as we start looking at these parameters, again, cadence, it shows us kind of on a sliding scale where it's at. Still a pretty good number. Vertical oscillation looks good. Ground contact time. And then it's nice here too, because this will kind of tell you what each of these parameters mean and kind of what you're looking at here. And then you can kind of see that scale as to like if you're in that green area versus more of the red. Okay, so some of the things I want to focus on with Emma, knowing that she has this right Achilles tendinopathy going on, we're going to be looking at tibial inclination. This is going to be an important value to consider whenever we're thinking about overstriding, because tibial inclination is going to be that angle of how far out is your tibia or your lower leg bone landing in front of your knee joint. So we can see here on the right, she has about 9 degrees. That's quite a bit further than what we want. You can see the left here is in that green area with about 4 degrees. Ideally, we want that tibia to be as close to 0 as possible. So it means that your foot is landing kind of right underneath your knee joint and that you're not really striking far out in front of yourself when you're landing. Foot inclination angle. This is going to tell us about the relationship of like how much dorsiflexion or toe up you have from the ground whenever you're landing. We see here with both, she's in 2 degrees of plantar flexion, and that will make more sense as we look down at how she's striking the ground. You're going to see more foot inclination and be more concerned about this being in that red whenever you're landing as a rear foot striker. Rear foot striking is not necessarily bad, but again, it's kind of all just the balance of making sure that you don't have too much of that foot inclination when you're landing. So that looks good there. Strike from center of mass is basically how far away from her center of mass is her foot landing when it's contacting the ground. Maybe a little bit more forward on that right side. Again, that's kind of something that we want to be aware of, knowing that she has this Achilles tendinopathy, because that may be putting a little bit of increased force through her Achilles and increasing her braking force. Okay, we'll go ahead and look at foot strikes. So then we see here, these values are either going to be rear foot or non-rear foot. So if it's non-rear foot, like we see for Emma here, that just basically means that she's not landing on her heel first. She could be landing more midfoot or forefoot, but we know that she's not landing on her ankle bone first. Okay. The next one we're going to look at is during her stance phases. So thinking about peak ankle dorsiflexion, that's going to be the maximum amount of ankle dorsiflexion that you'll have while you're standing on that leg. So kind of when you're in that mid stance phase, when you're supporting all of your weight through that ankle. So here she's pretty limited actually on both. So we have about 3 degrees on the right and 2 degrees on the left. Ideally, we want it to be a little bit higher than that. This kind of makes sense with that right side, knowing that she has some of that Achilles tendinopathy going on. Likely she's going to have some restrictions in that ankle mobility. So that might be something that's showing up here. And again, something that we would want to address, looking at what is her knee over toe mobility? What does that look like? How is her ankle joint moving? Okay, pronation. So this is basically, is that arch of the foot collapsing when you're standing on the foot? She's in the green here, so these look pretty good. But again, that would be something we'd want to hone in on the right side, just making sure that she's not getting too much pronation, because we know if you're over pronating a lot when you're running, that's going to put various like forces on the Achilles that may increase some of the risk factors for developing Achilles tendinopathy. Okay, and then we have peak knee flexion. She has a little bit lower numbers for flexion. Ideally, we want it to be like between 25 to 40 degrees, but nothing we're too concerned about there. Knowing that she was also categorized as a collapsing runner, we're going to pay attention to what is going on at her hips and her pelvis. So as we start to get into what the hips are doing, we look at the adduction. So that's basically just how far in towards midline is that femur collapsing when it's having to support the weight of the body. We can see on the right side, she's getting quite a bit more. So it's putting her in that yellow position there. Knowing that she's kind of collapsing on that right side too, that can also then translate down the chain and put more force through that Achilles. So that could be impacting what she's feeling with that tendinopathy. Internal rotation doesn't look terrible. Again, we have a little bit more on the right, which again, that just kind of correlates with that collapsing factor. So we want to be aware of that, knowing that she has that right side injury. And then contralateral pelvic drop. So that's just basically saying, like, when you're standing on the right side, is your pelvis dropping towards the opposite side? Are you having to lift up to kind of help prevent that pelvic drop? This is typically more of something I see related to hip strength. So if you have really excessive pelvic drop, then I'm talking to my runners about strengthening some of those glute muscles to help support that. Okay. And then another thing I like to look at too is her forward lean. This just is talking about the forward lean of her trunk while she's running. If you have a lower forward lean, you're going to be more upright, which then can lead to some more overstriding. So these look pretty good. Right might be a little bit high, but usually I like to see somewhere around 10 degrees. So I'm okay with those numbers there. And then looking at terminal stance. So this is kind of what the leg looks like right before it pushes off. So hip extension. So that's when that hip's as far behind you as it can be. We're limited here. Ideally, we like to see somewhere between 10 degrees to 19 degrees, and she has about 2 degrees of extension on both. This is not uncommon. I hardly ever see runners who really meet that normative range between 10 and 19 degrees, and that can be for a couple of factors. That could be weak glutes. It could be really tight hip flexors. She might be trying to protect things a little bit with not trying to get that triple extension and really push through on that push off because she's trying to protect that Achilles. So a couple of things that might be going on there that we could address, but just definitely something to note because hip extension is going to be tied in with your performance when running. So we want to make sure that you have adequate hip extension. Okay, supination, that looks okay. This isn't something I'd be so concerned with for the right side. I'm more concerned about that pronation, which we looked at earlier. And then swing phase, just kind of noting the peak hip flexion here. She's kind of in a good range there. So hips are moving well forward, but maybe could use some help with getting back behind her for that extension. Okay. And then at the end of this report, we get some of these charts to just look at comparing right and left side. I like to use these for, say, like if we're looking at the ankles, knowing that she has that Achilles tendinopathy happening, we can kind of look at, okay, what does the right side look like compared to the left with dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. You can kind of see that there's some variation here in how these charts are. So definitely tells us that there's some asymmetry between her left and right side. Again, same thing with supination, pronation. You can tell that the ankles are not symmetrical there. And then those numbers are just confirmed as we look back up in the numbers that we went through up here. So knowing these things about Emma's run gait, there'd be a couple of things I'd be working on. First, we'd try some cueing for the overstriding. So I'd be talking to her about trying to land with your feet underneath you or trying to step a little bit quicker to try and increase that cadence a bit more so that she doesn't have time to land out as far in front of her. And then with the collapsing, we definitely keep working on glute strength. We're going to be working on glute max, glute med. And then making sure that with hip extension, there's nothing mobility-wise limiting her, like tight hip flexors, making sure that she's cueing those glutes to turn on. So thinking about pushing the ground away from her. Those would be a couple of the things that I would work on with Emma, just knowing this data. And then obviously we'd still be working on stuff to address the Achilles. We'd be addressing gastroc strength, soleus strength, and then working on that ankle mobility too, knowing that she is a little bit limited with that plantar flexion, that dorsiflexion mobility while she's running. So then that's her report. If we go to Emma's calendar, this is what it will look like if we look at the week of the 20th. So once I assign her a program for the Overstrider collapser based on what she was categorized as, she can click on this and then it gives her the drills to do. So it would have this hip dynamic warm-up, marching drills, and then this wall drill too. So these are going to be things that I would have Emma do prior to when she runs to kind of help cue her body to start working on some of that overstriding, to start landing with her feet underneath her versus that having that overstriding gait. And then another thing I might do is I might also add some extra exercises if I wanted Emma to do anything specific for mobility or strength to her library section, and then she could go there and see the videos, and then I would add sets and reps to that as well. Okay.
And then it looks like also on the calendar, there's like a potential for like a return to run program that if I'm, taking time off of my running, yeah, I see on there, right, there's like various days, and it also attaches to a Garmin. So like I can wake up in the morning and already see my like preset return to run on my watch, which is really cool because it's been nice to be able to use that as I go.
Yep, and this is just a nice way to tie everything in, because then I can come back and I believe these are the ones that Emma has done, or these synced workouts. So I can then look at what she's doing based on her watch that's uploading. So I kind of have an idea of what she's doing outside of her workouts. She can see like what she's scheduled from the stuff that I'm giving her, and just kind of have it all in one place.
Great. And then when we were together, what was also cool, and we don't need to go into the separate stuff, but just as a comment, like you were able to take my results from my first run and then give me a few cues to work on to see if it would improve or not improve. And I think what we learned from those experiences are, if you can make improvements on the spot, like it's something that is a little bit easier to fix in terms of just making those neuromuscular changes. But if, scores are lowering, or if I'm not able to do it, it's more of a mobility strength issue that's going to take more time. And so we're able to kind of even just in session get a better idea of how much work is going to go into fixing this run long term. And then we can come back, in a couple of weeks and recheck and see that we're making progress based on what you've prescribed me. So it's a nice way to combine all of this awesome information and knowledge and, all these drills, and then really be able to make sure they're actually working. And if they're not, we can address it quicker and make some changes. So that was also really cool to see. Like you can see here, one of my scores went quite a bit higher when I started to improve my cadence. So, so that's just a nice thing to see as well.
Yeah, so definitely confirms that there's some cueing things that we can work on. But then again, like we're not just working on the running side of things, then we're also still addressing the strength, the mobility, those pieces to kind of get a complete rehab and improve that performance.
Great. And this is all included in your 3D gait analysis. So when you come and see us at Atomic, we'll see Emily specifically at Atomic. She's going to give you all of this in that first session. It's all included and will be yours at your own app and desktop. So you can see all of this and have kind of like updates as you go. So it's a pretty cool thing. So we recommend you come and try it out.